This programme was made with support from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Before the 1840s, there were no public parks in Britain. There were narrow pathways, pleasure gardens and private estates, but the nation lacked the public green spaces that were open to all. The expansion of towns and cities into the surrounding countryside had left urban dwellers increasingly divorced from the natural world and the attendant physical and psychological benefits. Campaigners and politicians like Edwin Chadwick and Robert Peel perceived the negative implications of this process, prompting them to champion the creation of green spaces for the benefit of all. Victorian philanthropy supported this political will, and wealthy landowners began to donate land that could be put aside for public spaces for recreation and relaxation. No longer would town and city dwellers only have access to private estates at the whim of the landowner. They could now enjoy public parkland that was open to all, a true people's park. The idea for a green public space that would become People's Park was first proposed by the Hennish family in 1860, whose connection to Lincolnshire can be traced back to the 14th century and beyond. In 1881, Baronet Edward Heneage offered the land between Welholme Road and Wheelsby Road for the purpose of establishing a public park in Grimsby.
The council provided £12,000 to develop the park. And in 1882, a park committee commissioned the planting of a double avenue of trees around the perimeter.
The 1883 competition to design People's Park was won by landscape gardener and nurseryman William Barron. The basic structure of William's design can still be seen today.
140 years ago last month, on the 17th of August 1883, crowds gathered the streets for the royal opening by Queen Victoria's son and his wife, the Duke and Duchess of Connaught.
The celebration of the 140th anniversary also coincided with the re-unveiling of the original brass plaque. It was reinstated for the event and now on display in the cafe.
I mean, it's a beautiful space that we all know was gifted to the people of Grimsby, and as the name tells us, was the park for the people. But interestingly, in the late 1800s, George Doughty, who went on to become the town's MP, was an alderman, and to access the park, people had to pay. But there was outcry from some of the councillors because they felt it was a park for the people, that the people should not have to pay to enter. They had a bit of a demonstration, and there was a few heated discussions, shall we say, on the topic. But as we know today, we don't pay as such to come into the park, though obviously through our tax I'm sure we do still.
I'm sure that the earth beneath our feet will reveal many secrets and stories, but there are no plans to excavate the park at the moment. However, the local Archaeological Society have explored a number of sites in North East Lincolnshire, including a rare urban site within the curtilage of Grimsby Minster.
We're in the town centre of Grimsby. It's a Grade 2 listed building. So the building dates back, as far as we can say, as in a brick building, to around about 1700. But the building itself predates that because we've got obviously documents from 1600 and sort of medieval times showing that there potentially would have been a timber building here. We happened upon this amazing society. So this is the North East Links Archaeological and Local History Society. And obviously I was walking around showing the building, and I walked past with a chair, David, and said, oh, there's a bit of land here. And he went, we could do an archaeological dig. I went, let's do an archaeological dig. And they went, what, really? I went, yeah.
And this was a rare opportunity to get into a piece of open land right in the centre. As you can see, we're 100 yards away really from the Minster.
We've gone down layer by layer. I've learned an awful lot about archaeology.
Whether it's a oyster shell, a coin, a piece of a vase, we found the bottom of poison medicine bottles.
You know, bits of bone, crockery, glass, those kind of bits that you can understand there's something else going on here. There's definitely a pit. We were hoping to get to medieval, and we've got to medieval. We've got medieval crockery coming out. We've got a huge amount of large oyster shells. You know, what's happened, what were the people doing, how did they work around here? So there's so many different stories that are coming through.
This year's Heritage Open Days are coming to an end, but there's still chance to catch some of the best this coming weekend.
On Saturday the 16th of September you can step back in time to life as it was back in the early 1900s and discover what it was like living in a tin bungalow while building the Immingham Docks.
Or take a tour of the fascinating Humberston Fitters with Caroline Carr and explore its vernacular architecture and unique fauna and flora.
And even discover the Romans of Wraith Valley with David Roger through live interpretation and a display of finds from a recent excavation of nearby Roman villa.
And on Sunday the 17th, there's a unique opportunity to explore Wheelsby Hall, one of the grandest buildings in North East Lincolnshire.
So the main differences between the flu and a general cold is that the flu tends to make you feel more poorly. So it tends to give you higher fevers, more aches and pains and chills, and makes you feel pretty wiped out.
So People's Park has seen many changes over the years since its opening in 1883.
And in 1894 the Smethurst Memorial was unveiled.
In 1901 the Queen's Observatory was opened but would be demolished again in 1949. In 1926 a small motorboat was introduced for tours on the lake.
And vehicles for the Normandy landings were parked out of sight between the trees.
During World War II, the central area of People's Park was turned into allotments for the Dig for Victory campaign.
In 1976, 2 new fountains were installed in the lake and the floral hall opened, replacing the old glass houses.
During the 90s, the original bandstand was demolished and replaced.
But by the turn of the last century, the park was beginning to show its age and was much in need of some serious care and attention.
It did fall into neglect. We've had, unfortunately, too much vandalism at certain times. We've had tipping of stolen cars and washing machines in the pond. Well, I was approached by the local authority in the year 2000. They'd been thinking for years the park needs something doing to it. All the pathways were beginning to get broken up and dangerous. It was very overgrown, miles of brambles, etc. And the pond was in a sad state. The edging to it was in disrepair, and that had to be rebuilt, and the pond drained. And to have a pavilion built in the centre of the park, because we'd been without that for many years, and there was a very ugly toilet block there, which needed demolishing. So having some facility like that, I think that was a great joy. I'm pleased to see it used more nowadays. It's good to see families bring a picnic out here. But I think it's very important to maintain an area like this, because otherwise people lose respect for it. But it's got to be maintained for the future, because it's got a long future ahead of it.
Like the renovation that changed People's Park, Grimsby Fish Docks is undergoing a cultural regeneration as creative industries move into the once derelict buildings, bringing them back to use in imaginative and inspirational ways. Local historian Emma Lingard is here to tell us more.
There's lots of projects happening down in Grimsby at the moment. We've obviously got the historic buildings on that horse-shaped location that we refer to as the Casbah, which I know is a name which makes people throw things at the television. But that is the last of the remaining Victorian buildings from when the port was built. So through the grant money, buildings have been taken on by tenants, and you know that they're taking time to restore and refurbish them. So the buildings will get a new lease of life. We've already got some tenants down there that are from the creative industries. We have a vision for the space, and I can't say too much about that right now, but it will be revealed in time. But one of the biggest things that we're currently working on is the old dock is now being used as a location for film and television. So look out in October on Netflix, because you've got the screening of the new series Bodies, and that the parts of it from 1941, they were all filmed in Grimsby and in Hull. So we've got about 6 inquiries on the cards right now, live inquiries of interested film and television, and we're talking blockbuster as well. So it's fingers crossed and watch this space.
Grimsby may have its Victorian People's Park, but residents and visitors to the nearby seaside resort of Cleethorpes have also enjoyed its many entertainment venues since Victorian times, including its famous pier. We're here in Cleethorpes to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the pier and to find out more about its history and heritage. Cleethorpes Pier is a fine example of Victorian architecture that has stood proudly on the beach for 150 years. During that time, the pier has attracted thousands of visitors, and I'm sure that many of you have fond memories here, as the pier was once an iconic club and concert venue. The Cleethorpes Promenade Pier Order was approved in 1867, and planning began on developing the town's seafront. Cleethorpes Pier opened on the 4th of August 1873, and on that first day nearly 3,000 people paid to walk on the pier. Cleethorpes was now a thriving seaside resort, with the beautiful pier at its heart. A concert hall was built in 1888 on the new pierhead, but it was short-lived as a fire destroyed the hall in 1903. A new pavilion was built closer to the shoreline, along with a cafe at the head of the pier to attract more visitors. In the interwar years, the pier was sold to Cleethorpes Borough Council, and in the early part of World War II, a large section of the pier walkway was deliberately destroyed to stop enemy invaders from using it as a landing stage if they made it between the Humber forts. Post-war compensation from the government wasn't enough to restore the pier, so it remained at the length you see it today, 1/3 of its original length. The current pavilion had around £50,000 spent on it in the 1960s to make it one of the most modern pier buildings on the East Coast. The pier remained as a club and concert venue for many years, and in the 1970s featured family favourites such as the Nolan sisters, Cannon and Ball, Tony Christie and Mike and Bernie Winters, and it was a key venue for Northern Soul. In the 90s and noughties, the musical heydays of the previous century were revived as the likes of Blur, Five, A1 and Billie Piper packed out the pier building. After a major renovation in 2015, the pier reopened as a high-quality restaurant and tea room and was named National Pier of the Year in 2016 by the Piers Society. In 2016, Papa's Fish and Chips bought the pier and created the world's largest fish and chip restaurant, which now attracts more than 2 million visitors each year and employs more than 100 people.
Papa's chose to be located on the pier because it's such a gorgeous, iconic venue. I mean, look at it. We just want to be part of the seaside experience at the heart of it. We get a lot of the older generation come in and say, I remember we used to dance here when it was a ballroom. And then some people come in and they remember it as a nightclub, and now fish and chips. We love it. We love the history here.
We asked Cleethorpes residents and visitors for their fondest memories of the pier.
Yes, my memories of the pier is from being a child, going to the summer shows, seeing the Nolan sisters and various other people.
I remember the lighting. The light was always fabulous, wasn't it, Norma?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I think as a child, that's what really sticks with you.
I came to the pier in 1976 for about 2 years to Northern Soul all-nighters, and I still love the music today.
Went to see Cannon and Ball perform together with my mother-in-law, and it was absolutely hilarious.
I can remember coming and seeing Shawaddy Waddy. It does bring back a lot of memories.
One of my best memories is when we did a Children in Need Day, and we had queues down the pier, and it was incredible. We had the most amazing atmosphere.
Over the past 150 years, the iconic Cleethorpes Pier has stood through war and fire. It's seen musical acts from variety to Britpop, and it served food to millions of visitors each year. And talking of food, I'm off to get myself some fish and chips.
This is a jewel in the crown for Grimsby. It is the best green space we have in the town, without a doubt. And it's such a lovely area.
I think it's a very important space for the local community. I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? And we host a summer programme in the park. We have a 5-date programme, a picnic in the park. The residents are invited to bring their own picnic, come along with family, friends, or just by themselves to enjoy the atmosphere, live music in the Victorian bandstand. It's a really lovely space which has a really nice atmosphere on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's become very popular. I think it's been one of the bonuses that the cafe's reopened now, which is huge, and they're doing a fantastic job.
So I took it over in September last year. It's very important. This is very important to the people around here because it's now building a community.
I've got some great memories. I've lived in the area a long, long time, since childhood, and my mum particularly used to bring us here for little picnics. Then, of course, we used to come to the events. They were particularly organised in those days by the Friends of the Hospital, and they were huge, you know, lots of things. Well, they seemed huge to a child anyway. There were lots of things going on, so I used to really enjoy it. Well, I loved it.
I think sometimes Grimsby has a bad name, but when it comes to things like this, they realise how great North East Lincolnshire and Grimsby is, really.
Well, that's all for the Heritage Channel for now. To make sure you don't miss any of our programmes, join our Heritage Channel or subscribe to our Facebook group. For a roundup of arts and entertainment across the region and a review of the latest film and book releases, tune in to our sister channel, Billboard TV. Thank you for watching. We look forward to seeing you next month for more news, views and heritage stories. programmes on the Heritage Channel are made with support from the National Lottery Heritage Fund.